Lucas Montgomery stood in front of his penthouse mirror, fixing his designer tie. At 45, he had everything money could buy. His real estate company was worth billions. He had houses all over the world. The magazines called him New York's most eligible bachelor, but none of it made him happy. He picked up his morning coffee and walked to the window. From up here, the city looked small, tiny people rushing around like ants, all of them wanting something, all of them chasing dreams, just like he had 25 years ago. "Mr. Montgomery," his assistant Maria called from the doorway, "the board meeting starts in 30 minutes. Lucas nodded, but his mind was somewhere else. It was back in that small town in Ohio, in Sally's diner, where he'd spent every afternoon of his senior year, where Hannah Carter had worked after school, serving coffee and apple pie with a smile that could light up the whole room. Hannah. Even after all these years, thinking about her made his heart beat faster. She was the only girl who had ever really known him, back when he was just Lucas, the boy from the wrong side of the tracks, working 2 jobs to help his sick mother. Before he became Lucas Montgomery, the billionaire everyone wanted to please. "Cancel the meeting," he said suddenly. Maria's eyes went wide. "But sir, the Shanghai deal. Cancel everything, I need to take a trip." 3 hours later, Lucas was on his private jet, heading to Ohio. He hadn't been back since the day he left 25 years ago, the day he promised Hannah he'd come back for her once he made something of himself. But he never did. He got caught up in making his first million, then his first billion. Every time he thought about going back, he told himself he needed to be more successful first. He needed to prove to everyone who had looked down on him that he was somebody. Now here he was, somebody important, somebody powerful, and he felt more like nobody than ever. The plane landed at the small regional airport. Lucas rented a car, nothing fancy, just a regular sedan. As he drove through the familiar streets of his hometown, everything looked smaller than he remembered. The movie theater where he and Hannah had their first date was closed down. The park where they used to sit and talk about their dreams had rusty swings and overgrown grass. But Sally's diner was still there, its neon sign glowing just like it had 25 years ago. Lucas parked across the street and watched people going in and out. His hands were sweating. What if Hannah wasn't there anymore? What if she was married with kids? What if she hated him for never coming back? Then he saw her through the window. She was older, just like him, but she still had that same warm smile, that same gentle way of talking to customers. Her hair was shorter now with some gray showing, but she moved with the same grace she had when she was 18. Lucas reached for the door handle, then stopped. What was he going to say? "Sorry I disappeared for 25 years, but hey, I'm rich now?" She'd probably laugh in his face. Or worse, she'd look at him with disappointment. No, he needed to know. Know if she was still the same Hannah who had loved him when he had nothing. Know if money and time had changed her the way they had changed him. He drove to a thrift store and bought some old clothes. Worn jeans, a faded t-shirt, a dirty jacket. He messed up his perfectly styled hair and rubbed some dirt on his face and hands. Looking in the rearview mirror, he barely recognized himself. Good. That was exactly what he wanted. Walking back to the diner, Lucas felt strange. People looked right through him, the way they used to when he was poor. A woman pulled her purse closer when he passed by. A man crossed to the other side of the street. The bell above the diner door jingled as he walked in. The smell of coffee and pie was exactly the same. Hannah was behind the counter filling salt shakers. Lucas's heart was pounding so hard he thought it might burst out of his chest. He sat at the counter keeping his head down. A young waitress started walking toward him, but Hannah touched her arm. "I'll take care of this one, sweetie," she said. Her voice was just like he remembered. Hannah walked over to him, notepad in hand. "What can I get you today?" Lucas kept his eyes down, making his voice rough and tired. I don't have any money, but I haven't eaten in 2 days. Is there maybe some work I could do, clean the kitchen or something?" He waited for her response, hardly daring to breathe. This was it. This was the moment he'd know if the girl he'd loved had changed as much as he had. Hannah didn't hesitate for even a second. She smiled at Lucas, still not recognizing him, and said, Of course you can eat here. No need to work for it. Everyone deserves a hot meal. Lucas felt his throat tighten. After all these years, she was still the same kind person he remembered. Let me get you our special, Hannah said. It's meatloaf today. Still make it the same. Way my mama taught me. While she was in the kitchen, Lucas looked around the diner. The same red vinyl booths, the same pictures on the walls. Even the old jukebox was still in the corner. He and Hannah used to play their song on it every Friday night. Hannah came back with a plate piled high with meatloaf, mashed potatoes, and green beans. She put it in front of him with a glass of water and a cup of coffee. You eat up now, she said, and don't worry about rushing, take your time. Lucas started eating and memories flooded back. The meatloaf tasted exactly the same. How many times had Hannah snuck him an extra portion when his family couldn't afford dinner? While he ate, Hannah worked behind the counter, but she kept glancing his way with concern in her eyes. She wasn't wearing a wedding ring, he noticed. His heart skipped a beat at that. Would you like some pie, she asked when he finished his meal. Made it fresh this morning. I couldn't, Lucas started to say, keeping up his act. Now don't argue. With me, Hannah said, already cutting a slice of apple pie. A little sweetness makes everything better. As she put the pie in front of him, their eyes met for a moment. Hannah tilted her head, studying his face. You know something? She said. You remind me of someone I used to know. A boy I loved a long time ago. Lucas almost choked on his pie. What happened to him? Hannah's smile turned sad. He left to chase his dreams in the big city, said he'd come back for me when he made it. She shook her head. But that's ancient history now. Do you ever wonder what happened to him? Used to all the time. Hannah wiped the counter with a cloth. I looked him up on the internet a few years back. Found out he'd become some big-shot businessman. Lucas Montgomery, that's his name now. Probably doesn't even remember this place. Or me. Lucas wanted to jump up and tell her who he was. But something held him back. The way she said his name, there was hurt there, but no bitterness. Sounds like he turned into a real important person, Lucas said carefully. Maybe, Hannah said, but the Lucas I knew didn't care about being important. He just wanted to help. People, especially his mama, she was sick back then. Wonder if he ever did take care of her the way he wanted to. Lucas felt shame wash over him. His mother had died 10 years ago in a nursing home. He'd paid for the best care, but he'd only visited twice a year, always too busy with work. You loved him a lot, Lucas said softly. Still do, if I'm being honest. Hannah laughed at herself. Isn't that silly? Holding on to somebody who's been gone for 25 years? It's not silly at all. Well, enough about my old memories, Hannah said. Tell me about yourself. Where are you headed? Lucas made up a story about looking for work, moving from town to town. Hannah listened with real interest, asking questions, showing genuine concern. You know, she said when he finished, my friend Tom owns the hardware store down the street. He's always looking for help. Want me to give him a call? You'd do that for a stranger? Nobody's really a stranger. Just a friend we haven't gotten to know yet. Hannah smiled. That's what my mama always said. Lucas remembered Hannah's mother saying exactly that all those years ago. She'd treated him like a son, even when everyone else in town looked down on him for being poor. Thank you, Lucas said, his voice rough with emotion. But I should probably get going. At least take some food for later, Hannah insisted, packing up a box with more meatloaf and pie. When Lucas stood up to leave, Hannah touched his arm. Wait, I never asked your name. James, Lucas lied, using his middle name. And thank you, Hannah. You don't know what this meant to me. How did you know my name? Hannah asked, surprised. Lucas panicked for a moment, then pointed to her name tag. Hannah laughed. Of course, silly me. Well, James, you come back anytime you need a meal or just someone to talk to. Lucas walked out of the diner, clutching the box of food. His chest felt tight. Hannah was exactly the same person she'd been 25 years ago. Kind, generous, caring. And he had changed so much he barely recognized himself. He got in his car and drove to the local motel. In his room, he looked at himself in the mirror, wiping away the dirt he'd put on his face. Tomorrow, he would go back to the diner. But this time, he would go as himself, as Lucas Montgomery. The question was, would Hannah be able to forgive him? And more importantly, did he deserve her forgiveness? That night, Lucas barely slept. He kept thinking about everything Hannah had said, about how she still loved the geek boy he used to be, about how that boy had wanted to help people, not just make money. When had he lost sight of that? When had impressing people become more important than being the person Hannah had believed in? In his dreams, he was 18 again, sitting in the diner with Hannah, sharing a slice of pie and talking about their dreams. Back then, his dreams had been simple: make enough money to take care of his mother, help people who were struggling like his family had struggled. Somewhere along the way, those dreams had turned into numbers in a bank account and his name in magazine articles. Morning came too quickly. Lucas put on one of his expensive suits and carefully styled his hair. But looking in the mirror, he didn't feel powerful anymore. He felt scared that Hannah would take one look at what he'd become and turn away in disappointment. But he had to try. He owed her that much. And maybe, just maybe, it wasn't too late to become the person she had always believed he could be. The morning sun was bright as Lucas walked toward Sally's diner. His expensive shoes clicked on the sidewalk. People who had ignored him yesterday now stared, whispering to each other. News traveled fast in small towns. The bell jingled as he opened the door. The diner was busy with the breakfast crowd. Hannah was pouring coffee for an elderly couple. When she looked up and saw him, the coffee pot slipped from her hand and crashed to the floor. "Lucas," she whispered. Her face went pale. The whole diner went quiet. Everyone knew their story. The poor boy who left town to chase his dreams. The girl who waited for him to come back. "Hello, Hannah," Lucas said softly. Hannah just stared at him, her hands shaking. Then she seemed to remember the broken coffee pot. She knelt down to clean up the mess. "Let me help," Lucas said, stepping forward. "No," Hannah said sharply. "Susan, can you clean this up? I need some air." She walked quickly toward the back door. Lucas followed her into the alley behind the diner. It was the same alley where they used to steal kisses between her shifts. 25 years, Hannah said, her back to him. 25 years without a word, and now you just walk in here like nothing happened. "I'm sorry," Lucas said. "I know that's not enough, but I am sorry." Hannah turned to face him. There were tears in her eyes, but her voice was steady. "Why are you here, Lucas? What do you want?" "I want to explain." "Explain what? How you became so successful?" "Don't bother. I've read all about the great Lucas Montgomery in the magazines. Real estate empire, private jets, million-dollar deals. Hannah, please. Did you come to show off? To let everyone see how far you've come from being that poor boy who couldn't afford his own coffee?" "No," Lucas said. "I came because I needed to see you." Hannah laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. "Well, now you've seen me, still serving coffee in the same diner, still living in my mama's old house, still stupid enough to keep your picture in my drawer." Her words hit him like punches. "You kept my picture?" "Right next to Mama's Bible. Isn't that pathetic? A 43-year-old woman holding onto a teenage dream." "It's not pathetic," Lucas said. He took a step toward her. "Hannah, yesterday..." "What about yesterday? The man in dirty clothes, the one who couldn't pay for his meal. That was me." Hannah's eyes widened, then narrowed. "That was you? You were testing me? I needed to know if you had changed, if time had made you hard or bitter." "Like it made you?" Hannah shot back. Lucas flinched. "Yes, like it made me." Hannah was quiet for a long moment. "Why did you never come back?" she finally asked. "The real reason. Not some excuse about being busy or building your empire." "Because I was ashamed," Lucas admitted. "At first, I wasn't successful enough to come back. Then, when I finally made it, I had changed so much. I wasn't the same person who left. I was afraid you'd see that, see what I'd become." "And what have you become, Lucas? Someone who forgot what really matters. Someone who measures everything in dollars and cents. Someone who doesn't deserve you." Hannah wiped her eyes. "You know what the worst part is? That boy who left? He didn't need to become rich to deserve me. He already had everything I wanted. A kind heart, big dreams, love for his mama. I still have dreams, Lucas said quietly. Really? What are they? More buildings, more money? Lucas shook his head. My dream right now is to go back in time, to the day I left, to do things differently. We can't go back in time, Lucas. No. But maybe we can start over. Hannah looked at him for a long time. The man who came in yesterday pretending to be poor, the way you acted then, that was more like the Lucas I knew than the man standing in front of me now in his $1,000 suit. I know, Lucas said. When I was pretending to be poor, I wasn't really pretending. I was just being myself, the real me under all this. He gestured to his expensive clothes. And which one is the real you now? I don't know anymore, Lucas admitted. But I'd like to find out. With your help. Hannah sighed. Lucas, I have a life here. A simple life, but it's mine. I take care of people. I make them feel welcome. I try to do some good in the world. Can you understand that? Better than you think, Lucas said. Yesterday, when you offered to help me find a job, when you gave me food without asking questions, that's when I realized how far I've strayed from who I used to be, who I want to be again. A customer called from inside the diner. Hannah, we need more coffee out here. I have to get back to work, Hannah said. Can I come back later? Maybe we could talk more. Hannah hesitated. The diner closes at 9. I'll be here, Lucas promised. And Hannah, thank you for yesterday, for today, for everything. Hannah went back inside. Lucas stood in the alley for a long time, thinking about everything she had said. She was right. The boy who left this town had wanted to help people just like she did. Somewhere along the way he'd forgotten that. He pulled out his phone and called Maria, his assistant. Maria, remember that homeless shelter project the board rejected because it wasn't profitable enough? The one in Brooklyn? Call them back. Tell them we're doing it. And find me all the other projects we turned down because they didn't make enough money. I want to review them all. But sir, the shareholders will have to deal with it. It's time I started using my money for something more important than making more money. After hanging up, Lucas walked around town. He saw things he hadn't noticed yesterday. The closed community center, the run-down playground, the food bank with empty shelves. By the time evening came, he had made more calls, set more plans in motion. For the first time in years, he felt like himself again. Not Lucas Montgomery the billionaire, but just Lucas, the boy who had wanted to make the world a little better. Now he just had to prove to Hannah that this change was real, that he could be the man she had always believed he could be. Not because he was rich or successful, but because he was finally ready to be true to himself. At exactly 9 o'clock, Lucas was back at the diner. Through the window he could see Hannah wiping down tables, her movements slow and tired after a long day of work. The last customer was just leaving. Hannah looked up when he walked in. She'd changed into jeans and a simple blue sweater, her hair loose around her shoulders. I wasn't sure you'd really come back, she said. I'm done running away, Lucas replied. Can I help you clean up? Hannah raised an eyebrow but handed him a cloth. They worked in silence for a while, wiping tables, putting chairs up. It reminded Lucas of their teenage years, when he used to help her close up so they could leave earlier and go for walks. Under the stars. You still make the best apple pie in Ohio, Lucas said, trying to break the ice. Mama's recipe, Hannah said. Some things don't need changing to be perfect. The hint of criticism in her voice wasn't lost on Lucas. I did some thinking today, he said, about changes, about who I've become. And I made some calls. Remember the old community center? I'm buying it. Going to fix it up, make it something the town can use again. Hannah stopped wiping tables. Lucas, we don't need your charity. It's not charity. It's trying to be the person I should have been all along. He put down his cloth. Do you remember what I used to say I'd do if I ever got rich? You said you'd help people who were struggling like your family did, Hannah said softly. Build places where kids could go after school instead of getting into trouble. Create jobs so parents wouldn't have to work 3 shifts to feed their children. I made all that money, and I forgot about those promises. Instead of helping people, I just kept making myself richer. Lucas sat down heavily in one of the chairs. Yesterday when you helped me, when you thought I was just some homeless man, it hit me. That's who I wanted to be. Someone who helps others, not someone who just counts his money. Hannah sat down across from him. The community center was important to you. You used to go there after your dad left when your mama had to work late. It kept me out of trouble, gave me a safe place to do homework, to dream about the future. Lucas looked around the diner, just like this place did later on, when a certain waitress would slip me free meals and help me study for tests. Small smile touched Hannah's lips. You were so determined to get good grades, to get a scholarship. I was determined to be worthy of you, Lucas admitted. Your family wasn't rich, but you never acted like being poor made someone less important. You helped everyone who came through that door, no matter who they were. Like Mama taught me, Hannah said, a full belly and a kind word can change someone's whole day. Your mother was an amazing woman. She asked about you, you know, even after you stopped writing. She always said you'd find your way back when you were ready. Lucas felt tears stinging his eyes. I'm so sorry I wasn't here when she passed away. She understood, said you had to find your own path. Hannah's voice grew quieter. I'm the one who didn't understand, who kept waiting, kept hoping. Don't expect you to forgive me, Lucas said, but I want you to know that the boy you believed in, he's still here, buried under years of wrong choices, but still here, and he's fighting to come back. Hannah was quiet for a long moment. Prove it, she finally said. What? Prove that you mean it, that this isn't just guilt or a rich man's midlife crisis. Show me that the Lucas I knew is really still in there. How? Stay, Hannah said simply. Not in your fancy hotel. Tom, the hardware store owner I mentioned yesterday, has a room for rent above his shop. Take it. Work in the community center project yourself. Don't just throw money at it. Get to know the town. Again, the people. Show me who you really are now. Lucas stared at her. You want me to live here, work here? Scared? Hannah challenged. Worried about getting your hands dirty? No, Lucas said slowly. Actually, it sounds right, like something the old me would have done. Then do it. Not for me, for yourself, for that boy who wanted to make a difference. Lucas stood up. I'll need to make some calls, arrange for someone to handle things in New York. So you can use the phone in the back, Hannah said. She hesitated, then added, and if you want, we serve breakfast at 6, in case you're hungry in the morning. I'll be here, Lucas promised. Then he smiled. But this time I'll pay for my food. Hannah shook her head, but she was smiling too. Go make your calls, Mr. Montgomery. Tomorrow's going to be a busy day. As Lucas walked to the back office, his phone started ringing. It was his board of directors, probably panicking about his earlier decisions. For the first time in years, he hit the ignore button without feeling guilty. He had more important things to focus on now, like finding his way back to being the person Hannah had loved. The person he had wanted to be before money and power changed him. It wouldn't be easy. 25 years of habits and attitudes wouldn't change overnight. But looking back through the diner at Hannah, who was now putting fresh flowers in the window vases, he knew it would be worth it, because maybe, just maybe, it wasn't too late to become the man he should have been all along. Not Lucas Montgomery, the billionaire, but just Lucas, the boy who wanted to make the world a little better, one kind action at a time. And this time he wouldn't run away. This time, he would stay and fight for what really mattered. Starting tomorrow at 6 a.m. with breakfast at Sally's Diner. The next morning, Lucas woke up in Tom's spare room above the hardware store. The bed was hard, the room was small, and he could hear the street sweeper outside. But somehow he felt more at peace than he had in his luxury penthouse. He put on jeans and a simple button-down shirt, no designer labels this time. Looking in the mirror, he ran a hand through his hair, leaving it naturally messy instead of perfectly styled. For the first time in years, he looked like Lucas instead of Mr. Montgomery. The morning air was crisp as he walked to Sally's Diner. A few early risers were already inside when he arrived at 6 sharp. Hannah was behind the counter pouring coffee. Well, look who actually showed up, she said when she saw him. I told you I would. Lucas sat at the counter, right where he used to sit when he was young. And I brought something. He pulled out an old worn notebook from his back pocket. Hannah's eyes widened when she saw it. Is that my dream journal? Lucas said. The one you gave me for my 18th birthday. I wrote down everything I wanted to do if I ever made it big. He opened it to a dog-eared page. Look at number 1 on the list. Hannah leaned over to read, fix up the community center. Add a library and a computer room so kids can do their homework. Make sure there's always food for anyone who's hungry. I kept this all these years, Lucas said softly. Even when I wasn't following it anymore, I couldn't throw it away. Hannah's eyes were shiny with tears. She quickly turned away to grab the coffee pot. You want your usual? 2 eggs over easy, wheat toast, no butter? You remember my order? Remember everything, Hannah said quietly. While she made his breakfast, more regulars came in. They all stared at Lucas, whispering to each other. He could imagine what they were saying. The rich boy who came back, probably just showing off. Then Tom from the hardware store walked in. Morning, Hannah. Morning, Lucas. Morning, Tom, Lucas said. Thanks again for the room. Well, we'll see if you last more than one night, Tom said gruffly. Hannah tells me you want to fix up the old community center. That's the plan. Actually, I was hoping to stop by your store later. Need to pick up some tools. Tom raised his eyebrows. Tools? You know how to use tools? I worked construction every summer in high school, Lucas reminded him. Helped build old Mrs. Johnson's porch, remember? That was a long time ago, son. Maybe. But some things you don't forget. Hannah put Lucas's breakfast in front of him. It was exactly how he used to like it. He took a bite and closed his eyes. It tasted like home. Your company okay with you? Staying here? Tom asked. They'll have to be, Lucas said. I called my assistant last night. I'm taking a leave of absence. Indefinite. Hannah, who was refilling his coffee, paused. What about all your important business deals? Other people can handle them. Right now, this is more important. What is? Tom asked. Proving something. To Hannah. No, Lucas said. Proving something to myself. After breakfast, Lucas walked to the community center. The building was in worse shape than he remembered. Broken windows, graffiti on the walls, weeds growing through cracks in the concrete. He was taking pictures with his phone when a group of teenagers walked by. They were the same age he had been when he used to come here after school. Hey, he called out to them. Hey, you kids have a minute? They looked at him suspiciously. Who are you? Name's Lucas. I used to come here when I was your age, planning to fix it up. What would you want to see in here? The kids looked at each other, then the tallest one spoke. For real? You're actually going to fix it? That's the plan, but I want to make it something you'll actually use, so what do you need? Slowly, they started talking. They needed a place to do homework. The library had closed last year. They wanted computers. Not everyone had them at home. A basketball court would be cool. Maybe some music equipment. Lucas wrote everything down in his old dream journal. How about you help me fix it up, he asked. I'll pay you fair wages, teach you some construction skills. Why would you do that? One of the kids asked. Because someone did it for me once, Lucas said. And when I was your age, Mr. Wilson, who owned the construction company, gave me a summer job, taught me everything he knew. Sometimes one opportunity is all it takes to change someone's life. The kids agreed to meet him there Saturday morning. As they walked away, Lucas heard one of them say, Isn't that the billionaire guy? Why's he wearing regular clothes? Lucas smiled and headed to Tom's hardware store. He needed tools, work gloves, maybe some safety equipment for the kids. As he walked, people on the street started recognizing him. But they weren't whispering about his money anymore. They were talking about the community center. In the hardware store, Tom watched him fill a cart with supplies. You're really serious about this, Tom said. Never been more serious about anything in my life. Hannah still loves you, you know, Tom said suddenly. Never even dated anyone else. Said her heart was taken. Lucas's hands tightened on the cart handle. I don't deserve her love. No, you don't, Tom agreed. But maybe you could earn it back. If you're really here to stay, if you're really ready to be the man she always thought you could be. That's what I'm trying to do. Well, Tom said, you're going to need more than just tools. You'll need permits, plans, inspections. I know some people who could help, if you're interested. Lucas, looked at the older man. "I'd appreciate any help you can give me." "Come by the house for dinner tonight," Tom said. "My wife Mary makes a mean pot roast. We can talk about what needs to be done." "Thank you," Lucas said. "Really?" "Don't thank me yet," Tom warned. "This town's going to test you, Lucas. Make sure you're really changed. Make sure you're here for the right reasons." "I know, and I'm ready for that test." As he carried his supplies back to the community center, Lucas passed Sally's diner. Through the window, he saw Hannah serving lunch to a young mother with 2 kids. The woman was counting change, looking worried. Hannah said something that made her smile, then brought extra fries for the children. That's who I want to be, Lucas thought. Someone who helps without expecting anything in return. Someone who makes the world a little better, one small kindness at a time. He had a lot to prove, to the town, to Hannah, to himself. But for the first time in 25 years, he felt like he was exactly where he needed to be. The next few weeks passed quickly. Every morning, Lucas had breakfast at Sally's diner. Every day, he worked at the community center. And every evening, his muscles ached in ways they hadn't since his construction days. But he felt good, real good. Word spread around town about what he was doing. More kids started showing up to help. Parents came too, bringing sandwiches and lemonade. Even some of his old teachers stopped by to see if the rumors were true, if Lucas Montgomery had really come home. One Saturday morning, while Lucas was teaching some teenagers how to replace a window, a familiar voice called out behind him. Well, the prodigal son returns. Lucas turned to see Michael Davis, his old high school rival. Michael owned the biggest car dealership in town now, and his belly showed that he enjoyed the good life. "Hello, Michael," Lucas said, climbing down from his ladder. "Good to see you." "Is it?" Michael smirked. "Word is you've gone crazy, gave up your fancy life to play handyman. What's the real story, Montgomery? Tax trouble? Company going under?" Some of the kids stopped working to listen. Lucas could see them getting angry on his behalf. "No trouble," Lucas said calmly. "Just keeping an old promise." To Hannah, Michael laughed. "Please, everyone knows you're just trying to get back in her good graces, but she's too smart for that. She knows you'll run back to your rich life as soon as you get bored playing poor." Before Lucas could answer, a voice rang out. "At least he's doing something for the town instead of just talking about himself all day." Hannah was standing there, holding a tray of sandwiches. Her cheeks were red with anger. Michael's face darkened. "Still defending him after what he did to you?" "I'm not defending anyone," Hannah said. "I'm just stating facts. Lucas is helping people. What are you doing besides selling overpriced cars?" The kids snickered. Michael's face got even redder. "You'll... See?" he snapped. "He'll break your heart again. That's what rich boys do. They play with regular people's feelings, then go back to their mansions." He stormed off. The kids started clapping. "That was awesome, Miss Hannah," one of them called out. Hannah set down her tray. "All right, everyone take a break. These sandwiches aren't going to eat themselves." While the kids ate, Lucas walked over to Hannah. "You didn't have to defend me. I wasn't defending you," she said. "I was defending the truth. You are helping people." "Michael's right about one thing, though," Lucas said quietly. "I am trying to get back in your good graces." Hannah looked at him for a long moment. "I know, but that's not why you're doing all this, is it?" "No," Lucas admitted. "I'm doing it because it's right, because it's who I always wanted to be. Getting another chance with you. That would just be a miracle I don't deserve." Hannah's eyes softened. "You know what I see when I look at you now? I see the boy who used to help old Mrs. Peterson carry her groceries, who tutored kids in math even though he was working 2 jobs, who dreamed about making the world better, not just richer." "I lost that boy for a while," Lucas said, "but he's finding his way back." Just then, Tom's truck pulled up. He got out, carrying some blueprints. "Got the permits," he called out. "City Council approved everything. We can start on the real work now." The kids cheered. Lucas felt his heart swell with hope. This was really happening. "I should get back to the diner," Hannah said. She hesitated, then added, "Some of us are having a bonfire at the lake tonight, like we used to in high school. You should come." "Really? Really? 8 o'clock. Bring marshmallows." After she left, Lucas couldn't stop smiling. Tom noticed. "Don't get too excited," he warned. She's just being friendly." "That's more than I deserve," Lucas said, "and more than enough for now." They spent the rest of the day planning the real renovation work. The kids had great ideas: a music room, a study area, a small kitchen to teach cooking classes. Lucas took notes on everything. That evening, he walked to the lake carrying 3 bags of marshmallows. The spot was exactly as he remembered it, a small beach with logs arranged around a fire pit. The same place where he and Hannah had shared their first kiss. Several people from town were already there. Some he recognized, some were new faces, but they all welcomed him, offered him a beer, made space on a log. Hannah arrived a little later. She sat next to him, close enough that he could smell her shampoo, still the same strawberry scent she'd used in high school. Someone brought out a guitar. They sang old songs, told stories, laughed about the good old days. It felt like time had melted away. "Remember when we used to talk about the future here?" Hannah asked softly, so only Lucas could hear. "Every night during that last summer," Lucas said. "We had such big plans. You achieved yours, became rich and successful." "No," Lucas said. "I achieved what I thought were my plans. But sitting here now, I realize our real dreams were different. We wanted to make a difference, help people, build something meaningful. And now I'm finally working on the right dreams. Better late than never, right?" Hannah smiled. In the firelight, she looked exactly like the girl he'd fallen in love with all those years ago. "Daddy! Daddy!" A little girl ran up to their log. She was maybe 6 years old, with Hannah's eyes and smile. Lucas felt his heart stop. Hannah had a daughter. Was she married after all? But the girl ran right past them to Tom, who scooped her up with a laugh. "There's my granddaughter." Lucas let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. Hannah noticed and laughed. "Did you think she was mine?" "For a second there." "No," Hannah said softly. "I never found anyone I wanted to have a family with. After you..." She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. The night went on. More people arrived, bringing food and drinks. Stories were told, memories shared. Lucas noticed something interesting. Nobody talked about his money or his success. In New York, they talked about the community center, about the kids he was helping, about the changes he was making in town. For the first time since he'd come back, he felt like maybe, just maybe, he was becoming the person he was always meant to be. Not Lucas Montgomery the billionaire, but just Lucas, the boy from their town who wanted to make things better. And sitting there next to Hannah, watching the flames dance under the stars, he realized something else. He was happier now, in his small room above the hardware store, working with his hands, helping people, than he'd ever been in his luxury penthouse. Money couldn't buy this feeling. It couldn't buy the pride in those kids' eyes when they learned something new. It couldn't buy the way Hannah looked at him now. Not with love, not yet, but with growing trust and maybe, just maybe, a hint of hope. The community center project was going well when trouble arrived in a sleek black car. Maria, Lucas's assistant from New York, stepped out wearing a designer suit that looked completely out of place on the small town's main street. "Mr. Montgomery," she called out, as Lucas was teaching 2 teenagers how to paint walls. "We have an emergency." Lucas climbed down from his ladder, wiping paint from his hands. "Maria, what are you doing here?" "The board is threatening to remove you," she said quickly. "Your recent decisions, the homeless shelter project, the charitable donations, taking this leave of absence. The shareholders are worried you've lost your mind." The teenagers had stopped painting to listen. Lucas could see worry in their eyes. "Let's talk about this over coffee," he said, leading Maria toward Sally's diner. When they walked in, Hannah was behind the counter. Her smile faded when she saw Maria. "Your usual table is free," she said coolly, grabbing 2 menus. After they sat down, Maria pulled out her tablet. "The Shanghai deal is falling apart. The developers won't proceed without your personal involvement. And the London office is in chaos. You need to come back to New York today." Lucas looked around the diner. The regular customers were pretending not to listen, but he could see their concerned faces. Hannah was wiping the same spot on the counter over and over, clearly paying attention to every word. "I can't leave," Lucas said. "Not now." Mr. Montgomery, Lucas, Maria leaned forward. You've built this company from nothing. It's your life's work. Are you really going to throw it all away for this? She gestured around the small diner. I'm not throwing anything away, Lucas said firmly. I'm finally doing what I should have been doing all along. Using my money and influence to help people. The board meeting is tomorrow morning. If you don't show up, they'll vote you out. You'll lose everything. Hannah dropped a plate in the kitchen. The crash made everyone jump. Not everything, Lucas said quietly. Maybe it's time for a change anyway. Maria stared at him. You can't be serious. This is billions of dollars we're talking about. How much does a person really need, Maria? Look around this town. People here aren't rich, but they help each other. They build things together. They care. Is this about her? Maria nodded toward Hannah. Your small-town girlfriend from 20 years ago? This is about who I want to be, Lucas said. The board can have my company if that's what they want. But I'm staying here. Maria's phone buzzed. She looked at it and her face went pale. It's worse than we thought. Michael Davis is making a move to buy controlling interest in the company. Michael Davis? Hannah had walked over to their table. Our Michael Davis, the car dealer. Apparently he's been quietly buying shares for months, Maria said. He's working with some of your competitors. If they succeed, they'll break up the company. Thousands of people will lose their jobs. Lucas felt like he'd been punched in the stomach. All those people who depended on him. Secretaries, janitors, workers in his factories and offices around the world. The board meeting is at 9 a.m. tomorrow, Maria said, standing up. A car will be waiting at your hotel at 6. I'm not staying. At a hotel, Lucas said. I live above the hardware store now. Maria looked like she might cry. Please, Lucas, don't throw everything away. You can do both, run your company and help this town. Just come back to New York. Just for a few days. After she left, the diner was silent. Everyone was looking at Lucas, waiting to see what he would do. Hannah brought him a cup of coffee. Her hands were shaking slightly. You should go, she said, softly. Hannah, those people need their jobs, Lucas. The community center can wait. Lucas looked into her eyes. If I go back, I'm afraid I'll get pulled in again, become that other person again. Then don't let that happen, Hannah said. Be the man I see now, the one who cares about people more than profits. Just do it there instead of here. Come with me, Lucas said suddenly. To New York, just for a few days. Help me stay grounded. Hannah's eyes widened. I can't just leave the diner. Sure you can. Sally herself spoke up from behind the counter. Cindy and I can handle things for a few days. Go. Make sure our boy doesn't forget where he comes from. Lucas held his breath, waiting for Hannah's answer. She looked around the diner at all the familiar faces, faces that had known her and Lucas since they were kids. They were all nodding, encouraging her. Okay, she finally said, but I'm not wearing any fancy clothes and you're paying for my ticket. Lucas smiled. I wouldn't have it any other way. That evening, while Hannah packed a small bag at her house, Lucas sat in his room above the hardware store making calls. By midnight, he had a plan. It was risky, would cost him most of his personal fortune, but it felt right. The next morning, a town car arrived to take them to the airport. The driver looked surprised when Lucas came out wearing jeans and work boots instead of his usual suit. You? No, Hannah said as they drove to the airport. I've never been on a plane before. Lucas took her hand. Don't worry, I won't let you fall. Hannah squeezed his hand. I'm more worried about you falling, back into your old life. That's why I need you there, Lucas said, to remind me who I really am. As the car pulled away, neither of them noticed Michael Davis watching from across the street, a satisfied smile on his face. Have a nice trip, Montgomery, he muttered. By the time you get back, everything you built will be mine, including Hannah. Hannah couldn't stop staring out the plane window. The clouds looked like cotton candy and the cities below seemed tiny, like doll houses. Lucas watched her face, remembering how it felt to see the world from up here for the first time. It's beautiful, she whispered. Wait until you see New York, Lucas said, though it's not as pretty as our town. Our town? Hannah smiled. So you really think of it as home again? More than ever. When they landed, a fancy car was waiting for them. Hannah looked uncomfortable as the driver opened the door. "We could just take a taxi," she said. "The board expects certain things," Lucas explained. "But don't worry, it's just for show." The car took them to Lucas's penthouse apartment. When they walked in, Hannah gasped. The place was bigger than 3 houses put together, with windows that showed the whole city. "This is where you live?" she asked. "Used to live," Lucas corrected her. "Honestly, I like my room above Tom's store better. This place, it's beautiful, but it never felt like home." Maria was waiting for them, holding a garment bag. "I took the liberty of having a suit prepared for you, Mr. Montgomery, and—" she looked at Hannah's simple dress. "I have some options for Miss Carter as well." "No, thank you," Hannah said, firmly. "I am what I am. The board can take me as I am or not at all." Lucas smiled. This was the Hannah he remembered, kind to everyone, but strong in her beliefs. "The meeting's in an hour," Maria said. "The board members are already arriving and Michael Davis is here." Lucas nodded. "Good. Everything's ready?" "Yes, but—" Maria bit her lip. "Are you sure about this? It's very risky." "I'm sure." While Maria made some calls, Lucas showed Hannah around the apartment. She stopped at his desk, looking at a framed photo. It showed teenage Lucas and Hannah at their high school prom. "You kept this?" she asked softly. "It's the only personal photo I have here," Lucas admitted. "Everything else is awards and business pictures." Hannah touched the frame gently. "We were so young, so full of dreams." "We still can be," Lucas said. "Different dreams maybe, but good ones." Before Hannah could answer, Maria came back. "It's time." They took the elevator to the top-floor boardroom. 20 serious-looking people in expensive suits sat around a huge table, and there at the far end was Michael Davis, looking smug. "Well, well," Michael said, "the prodigal CEO returns. And look who he brought, our small-town waitress." Some board members snickered. Hannah held her head high and sat down next to Lucas. "Let's get started," the board chairman said. "Mr. Montgomery, your recent actions have caused serious concern among the shareholders. Taking on unprofitable projects, giving away millions to charities, abandoning your duties to play handyman in some small town. Those aren't the actions of a responsible CEO," Michael cut in. "That's why I'm offering to buy controlling interest, save the company before it's too late." Lucas stood up slowly. "Before we vote, I have something to say and show you." He nodded to Maria, who started a video presentation. On the big screen, images appeared. The homeless shelter being built in Brooklyn, the community center renovation, children learning, computer skills, families getting food and shelter. "You think these projects are worthless because they don't make money," Lucas said. "But let me show you something else." The next slides showed numbers. Employee satisfaction up 40%. Productivity increased. Positive media coverage worth millions in advertising. "Happy employees work better," Lucas explained. "When a company shows it cares about communities, people want to do business with it. Yes, I've spent money on helping people, but we've gained something more valuable: trust, loyalty, purpose." "Pretty words," Michael sneered. "But business is about profits, not feelings." "Really?" Lucas pressed a button and new numbers appeared. "Our stock price is up 15% since we started these projects. Employee turnover is down. We're getting tax benefits we never had before. Turns out, doing good is good business." The board members were muttering, looking at the figures. "But that's not even the main reason to do this," Lucas continued. He looked at Hannah, drawing strength from her proud smile. 25 years ago, I left my hometown chasing money. I thought being rich meant being successful, but I was wrong." He walked around the table, making eye contact with each board member. "Real success is making a difference, building things that help people, using our power and money to lift others up. That's what this company should be about." "Ridiculous," Michael spat. "The shareholders will never—" "Actually," Maria interrupted, "we've been contacted by several major pension funds. They're interested in increasing their investment, specifically because of our new community-focused direction. Ethical investing is the future." Lucas pulled out a folder. "I'm proposing a new company charter. one that makes community service and ethical business practices part of our core mission. And I'm pledging half my personal fortune to start a foundation that will oversee these projects." The boardroom erupted in discussion. Hannah reached for Lucas's hand under the table. "You're giving away half your money," she whispered. "Money's just money," Lucas whispered back. "Some things are worth more." The chairman called for order. "This is unusual, Mr. Montgomery, but the numbers are compelling. Perhaps we've been too focused on short-term profits." "This is insane." Michael stood up, red-faced. "You're all falling for his act? He's just trying to impress his old girlfriend." "No, Michael," Hannah spoke up for the first time. Everyone turned to look at her. "He's trying to be the person he always was inside. The person who cared about others. The person this company needs him to be." Her simple, honest words seemed to touch something in the room. The board members looked at each other, then at Lucas. Not as a CEO in jeans, but as a man who was fighting for something he believed in. "I move we vote now," one member said. Michael stormed out before they even started counting. He knew he had lost. The vote was close, but Lucas won. He would stay, as CEO with a mandate to continue his new direction for the company. As people filed out, congratulating him, Hannah squeezed his hand. "You did it," she said. "No," Lucas smiled. "We did it. I couldn't have found my way back without you." They looked out the boardroom windows at the city below. Somewhere out there, people were getting help. Lives were being changed, all because a small-town boy had finally remembered what really mattered. "Ready to go home?" Lucas asked. Hannah looked surprised. "Don't you need to stay? Run your company?" "I can do that from anywhere. Modern technology, remember? Besides," he smiled, "we have a community center to finish." As they left the boardroom, Hannah stopped him. "Lucas, I'm proud of you, really proud." Those simple words meant more to him than all the business awards hanging on his walls, because this time he was proud of himself too. When Lucas and Hannah returned to town, something felt wrong. The community center was locked up and none of the kids were around. Even the streets seemed quieter than usual. They went straight to Sally's diner, but instead of the usual lunch crowd, they found Tom waiting for them with a worried look on his face. "Thank God you're back," he said. "Michael Davis has been busy while you were gone." "What do you mean?" Lucas asked, sitting down. Tom pulled out some papers. "He's been buying up properties all over town. The old factory, empty stores, even some houses. And now he's trying to get the city council to condemn the community center. Says it's unsafe," Hannah gasped. "He can't do that. The building inspector approved everything." "He's got a new inspector who says different," Tom explained. "And that's not all. He's telling everyone you're planning to turn the whole downtown into fancy shops and expensive apartments. People are scared they'll lose their homes and businesses." Lucas felt sick. This was Michael's revenge at trying to turn the town against him. "Where are the kids?" Hannah asked. "The ones who were helping with the community center?" "Their parents won't let them come anymore," Tom said sadly. "They're afraid of getting involved." Just then Sally came out from the kitchen. "You two need to see this." She turned on the small TV over the counter. Michael Davis was on the local news, standing in front of his car dealership. "Lucas Montgomery isn't here to help our town," Michael was saying. "He's here to buy it up and kick out the regular folks. Just look at his record in New York, tearing down old neighborhoods to build luxury condos. Is that what we want for our home?" Lucas stood up so fast his chair fell over. "That's a lie. I've never torn down any neighborhoods." "Calm down," Hannah said softly, touching his arm. "Getting angry won't help." "She's right," Tom agreed. "You need to fight smart, like you did in New York." Lucas took a deep breath. Hannah was right. Anger wouldn't solve anything. He needed to think clearly. "First things first," he said. "We need to talk to the kids and their parents. Show them the truth." "Use my house," Sally offered. "It's big enough for a meeting." They spent the afternoon making calls. Hannah knew everybody in town and most people trusted her. By evening, the living room in Sally's Victorian house was full of familiar faces. Parents, kids, shop owners. Lucas stood in front of them, feeling nervous. These weren't board members who cared about profits. These were people who cared about their town, their children's future. "I know you're scared," he started. "Change is always scary. But I'm not here to change our town. I'm here to help make it better for everyone." He pulled out his old dream journal. 25 years ago, I wrote down everything I wanted to do if I ever had the money to help people. Want to know what's on that list? He started reading. Fix up the community center. Create jobs that pay fair wages. Help families keep their homes. Start programs to teach kids useful skills. He looked up. That's still my dream. Not luxury condos, not kicking anyone out. Just helping our town be the best it can be. One of the parents stood up, Mrs. Johnson, who taught 3rd grade. But what about what Michael Davis said about you destroying neighborhoods in New York? That's a lie, Hannah spoke up. I was just in New York. I saw the projects Lucas's company is doing. They're building homeless shelters, fixing up old buildings for people who need homes. He even gave away half his money to make sure it keeps happening. The room got quiet. Everyone knew Hannah. They knew she wouldn't lie. Half your money? Tom asked. Really? Lucas nodded. Money's not worth much if you don't use it to help others. That's something I learned right here in this town. From all of you. One of the teenagers, Jimmy, who'd been learning carpentry at the community center, stood up. I don't care what Mr. Davis says. Lucas taught me more in 2 weeks than I learned. In 2 years of school. He cares about us. More people started speaking up. Parents talked about how their kids were doing better in school since having a place to study. Shop owners mentioned how the community center project was bringing more people downtown. But what about the building inspector? Someone asked. If he says it's unsafe, that's easy to fix, Tom said. I called some friends in the state capitol. They're sending an independent inspector tomorrow. No connection to Michael Davis. Lucas felt Hannah's hand slip into his. He squeezed it gently. I promise you, he said to the room, I'm not going anywhere. This is my home. You're my people. Whatever Michael Davis tries, we'll face it together. After the meeting, people lingered to talk. Kids asked when they could come back to work on the center. Parents offered to help fight the city council. It felt like the whole town was coming together. Later, walking Hannah home, Lucas felt lighter despite everything that had happened. You know what I realized today, he said. Michael Davis did us a favor. How do you figure that? He tried to turn people against us, but instead he brought us all closer together, made us remember we're a community. Hannah stopped walking and turned to face him. The streetlight made her eyes sparkle. When did you get so wise? She asked. I had a good teacher, Lucas smiled, a waitress who always knew what really mattered in life. Hannah looked at him for a long moment. Then, for the first time since he'd come back, she stood on tiptoe and kissed his cheek. Welcome home, Lucas, she whispered. Really home. As they walked on, Lucas touched his cheek where she'd kissed him. Tomorrow they'd deal with Michael Davis and his schemes. But right now, in this moment, everything was perfect. Because finally, after 25 years, he wasn't just back in his hometown. He was truly home. The next morning, the state building inspector arrived bright and early at the community center. She was a no-nonsense woman named Mrs. Martinez, who took her job seriously. Lucas and Tom walked with her through every room, showing her their work, explaining their plans. Well, she said after 2 hours of careful inspection, whoever said this building was unsafe either didn't know what they were looking at or was lying. The work here is excellent, better than most professional crews I've seen. She wrote up her report right there, officially declaring the building safe and up to code. Lucas could have hugged her. But Michael Davis wasn't done fighting. That afternoon, he called an emergency city council meeting. The room was packed with people from town, including all the kids from the community center and their parents. Michael stood at the podium, wearing his flashiest suit. This isn't about one building, he declared. This is about the future of our town. Do we want to stay the friendly small town we've always been? Or do we want big city developers coming in, changing everything? He pulled out some papers. I have proof that Lucas Montgomery's company has bought up small towns like ours all over the country, turned them into tourist traps where regular folks can't afford to live anymore. The room erupted in worried whispers. Lucas stood up, but before he could speak, Hannah beat him to it. That's not true, she said clearly, walking to the front of the room, and I can prove it. She opened her purse and pulled out some photographs. I just got back from New York. These are pictures of what Lucas's company really does. This is a homeless shelter they built. This is a free medical clinic. This is a job training center. She turned to face Michael. Why are you really doing this, Michael? Is it because Lucas is actually helping people, or because you're still angry that I chose him over you in high school?" The room got very quiet. Michael's face turned red. "This isn't about—" "That was a long time ago." "Yes, it was," Hannah agreed. "And maybe it's time to let old grudges go. This town needs help, Michael. Real help. Not more car dealerships." Lucas walked up to stand beside Hannah. "I have an offer for you, Michael. Instead of fighting me, work with me. Your business skills, my resources. We could do amazing things for this town together." Michael stared at them, surprised. "You'd trust me? After everything I've done?" "Everyone deserves a second chance," Lucas said. "I got mine." The city council voted unanimously to support the community center project, and to everyone's surprise, Michael Davis voted with them. Later that evening, Lucas and Hannah walked through the almost finished community center. The kids had come back to work that afternoon, painting walls and arranging furniture. Their laughter still echoed in the halls. "Remember when we used to come here after school?" Hannah asked. "You always said someday you'd fix this place up." "Took me long enough," Lucas smiled, "but some dreams are worth waiting for." They reached the main room where the kids had hung a big banner. "Welcome home, Lucas and Hannah." "They made that this afternoon," Hannah said softly. "They really love you." "You know, as I love them too, love this town, love—" Lucas stopped, his heart pounding. "Love you still, always." Hannah turned to face him. "Prove it." "How?" "Stay. Not just for now, not just until the center is finished. Really stay. Be part of this community. Be the man I always knew you could be." Lucas took her hands in his. "I'm not going anywhere. Ever again. These past few months, helping people, working with my hands, being part of something bigger than myself. It's all I ever really wanted. I just forgot for a while. And the company, New York. I can run things from here. The board approved it today. We're even opening a rural development division, helping other small towns. And guess who's going to help run it?" "Michael Davis?" Lucas nodded. "He knows business. He knows small towns. And maybe like me, he just needed a chance to do something. Good?" Hannah's eyes were shining with tears. "You've really changed." "No," Lucas said. "I just remembered who I was. Who we were. Who we could be again if you're willing to give me another chance." Instead of answering, Hannah kissed him. Right there in the community center where they'd first fallen in love as teenagers. It felt like coming home. A cheer erupted from the doorway. They turned to see the kids, their parents, Tom, Sally. Seemed like half the town had sneaked in to watch. "About time," Tom called out, making everyone laugh. Later that night, Lucas and Hannah sat on the front steps of her house, looking at the stars, just like they used to. "You know," Hannah said, "Mama always said you'd come back when you were ready. When you'd learned what you needed to learn." "Your mama was a wise woman," Lucas said. "I had to learn that success isn't about how much money you make. It's about how many lives you make better." Hannah leaned her head on his shoulder. "And are you successful?" Lucas looked around at his hometown, at the community center in the distance where kids would have a safe place to learn and grow, at the people walking by who waved and smiled, no longer seeing him as the rich outsider, but as one of their own, at Hannah beside him, where she had always belonged. "More successful than I ever dreamed," he said. 6 months later, they got married, in the community center. Michael Davis was the best man. Tom walked Hannah down the aisle, and all the kids they'd helped formed the wedding party. Lucas didn't wear an expensive suit. Hannah's dress was simple and beautiful, just like her, and when they said their vows, they promised not just to love each other, but to keep working together to make their town and the world a little bit better. After all, that's what real success is about. Not the size of your bank account or the power you hold, but the lives you touch, the good you do and the love you share. Some people spend their whole lives chasing dreams of wealth and power. But Lucas Montgomery had finally found something better. He'd found his way home. To his town, to his true purpose, and to the woman who had always believed in him. And that was worth more than all the money in the world.